registered for 2 separate courses. I guess some of you that were already here at Concordia versus some of you coming straight in from high school. So it has 2 separate things. They finally just, last night, made it all one, so it includes everything. So I'll start uploading the content starting possibly tonight or tomorrow. I would say tomorrow, right? And I'll put all 16 weeks worth of stuff on there. So, you know, for those of you who want to move ahead quicker, you can, you know, submit work or read or contribute to the course you can. So that should be up shortly. Okay, back to psychology. We feel like we learned anything last course that we'd like to share our understanding about psychology? Do we feel like we have a general understanding of what psychology is or how important it is? How important is the study of psychology or the understanding of psychology? How important is it?
I mean, it really all depends, honestly. I mean, there's not really a set point for how important it is for every little thing. I mean, if there, like, there's different situations for how important psychology could be. Like, let's say you're in surgery, like, they're in surgery, or a surgical standpoint. There's different types of standpoints of how important it can be when you're using the mind and everything else like that.
Yeah.
There's no really set standpoint.
So you said it's subjective, right? It's a subjective thing, it's your own perspective. Right? But here's the argument against that, right? Psychology is everything. Literally everything. It's how you think. How do you know what you know? How could you interpret to me to say, I know what I know? How could you interpret to me to say, I think this way? I think a thought. What is a thought? Why is that thought in your brain versus others? So literally, psychology kind of comes from the idea of philosophy on existentialism. Why we hear, why we think, how do we know we're alive, how do we know this is not the Matrix, right? How do we know this is not a program, you're just sitting here and this is not even real? Psychology deals with all of that, included it deals with you guys as a group. Psychology of groups, psychology of organizations. What is Apple's organizational psychology? What is Microsoft? What is Concordia? What is the psychology behind Concordia University? Right? It may have particular values. Like, well, okay, where do values come from? Concordia may have particular morals about it, standards, protocols, policies. That's all the mind frame of this institution. So psychology literally deals with every single aspect of life because it deals with you. It deals with how you learn, perceive, have senses to different things, perspectives, why you view something this way, why you view something that way, how you attribute things to be facts and not facts, right? We got issues with COVID, right? Conspiracy theories. People say, oh man, I believe this, I believe that, I believe this, I believe that. I'm right, you're wrong. This is all the psychology of dealing with the pandemic. So the point is, if you can understand psychology very well, you can understand yourself, which is the most important thing. Because you're the one living in a world and having experiences with the world. Also, if you're able to understand psychology of yourself, being aware, self-aware, being very conscious, it will improve your life greatly and make you understand others. It make you so not emotional towards things. You have a better understanding of human behavior, right? It make you be a lot more accepting of things as opposed to, hey, I don't understand this person, I don't understand this. You'll be able to observe things happening before it happens and see why, and have an understanding of why it happens. So psychology is extremely important, right? Because we can look at the different personalities here in this class, right? Say, hey, what makes you you? What makes you you? Why are you so special, right? Why we all think we're special, right? I'm me, right? I'm great, I'm this and that. No, why do you want to do the things you want to do? Why are they so important to you that it gets done? Right? It may be different reasons. Hey, I want others to validate me. I want to do that so I'll look great. I'll feel great. There's reasons behind all of that. There's reasons behind how you think, who you think you are, who you want to be. Hey, I want to be this guy. I want to be this person, this person. There's reasoning behind it all. So if you can understand psychology at the basic level, you can understand all of it. And things may start to make a little bit more sense, right? There's really no field I can think of where psychology is not a big factor. Like I said, we talked before about clothing. Let's say fashion. Why'd you choose that sweatshirt? Why is that important, right? Why do you like to show school spirit or team spirit? Right? Why is that important to you? Or why do you buy those shoes? Why do you buy that? How did they convince you to buy that particular thing versus something else? At some point you made a choice. You made a decision, right? You spent your money, you bought something. For what reason? To identify yourself. You're like, hey, this is me. This is what's important to me. This is my personality. This is what I want to communicate and express to the world about who I am as a person. But if we just live that without having understanding of that, understanding ourselves and why we do that, it makes things more challenging as we have things that oppose us. Right? It makes life actually harder to deal with things because all of us face challenges. We will all face some sort of difficulty and we have to adapt and address. Your brain is a very powerful tool, meaning it has neuroplasticity. Anyone knows what neuroplasticity is? Yes. Yeah, essentially how your brain molds itself to adapt, right? Your brain molds itself to adapt in an environment. So say if you face a car accident, right? It's out the blue, car accident, 70 miles an hour, you're alive, you're still alive. How your brain is gonna adapt to that trauma. Like, wow, my life was going great just now. A second later, it is going bad. So your brain will adapt to that quickly so that you are able to survive, right? It's all part of natural survival mechanisms already implanted within us. But it also helps us learn a great deal more, right? So you start reading information, looking at information, you begin to learn new things, your mind actually changes, your brain actually changes, because there's new pathways created to learn a new thing. Like, yeah, I learned a new subject, okay, I'm gonna learn another subject, and this, and that, and this, and that. So chapter 1 talks about the 3 main levels of analysis for psychology, right? How do we understand psychology as a science? We say, how do we actually create facts through psychology and understanding our environment, or things, or places, or people? Right, so there's 3 main levels of analysis in psychology and the science of psychology. One is biological analysis, right? We look at the actual genetic structures of people. Right? And we say that some people may have a propensity to be alcoholics. Why? Why some people may have a higher propensity than others to be substance abusers? Any hands? Yes.
Well, like I know friends, like if their parents were like alcoholics, they tended to either go the path of being an alcoholic or learning from their mistakes and then going the other route.
Yes, absolutely, right? Our cells are evolving. These are natural processes. So if your parents or grandparents did something for a prolonged period of time and it became part of who they are, those genes can actually pass on to others. Right? And therefore you'll have to go back, hey, I don't understand why I struggle with this thing. But all you have to do is look at your history and be like, oh man, grandpa did, grandma did, dad did, mom did. Right? And if you know this ahead of time, you can actually help yourself or prevent from those mechanisms. But there's also biological things that help. Like, hey, dad was an athlete, granddad was an athlete in this particular sport. You're like, all right, well, his biological makeup actually helps my biological makeup hit that well to the sport. You know, I could jump high, I could fast twitch muscles, slow twitch muscles, all these different variables. So biology is extremely important to understand, not just the physical aspect, but our mental aspect, our mind, how our mind thinks. We might think very similar to our parents or our grandparents based off of biology. Which is important, actually, kind of knowing your history within your family. A lot of, families are broken up and people don't actually know, their history within their families, which, leads to more challenging issues because they'll struggle with things, not having a kind of a sound understanding why this particular family struggles with. And a clear indication could be like a hereditary thing, right? Genetic thing. So purely psychological analysis just deal with observation of how people behave. Just looking, observing the mental capacity of people, their mind frame, their mind states, and how that contributes to their behavior in life. Right? So we're just looking at purely mental processes. Right? Without particularly looking at biological. We're just looking at how that individual behaves, right? The other one is actually extremely, as equally important, I would argue, sociocultural, right? Can someone give an example of sociocultural aspects? Say for yourself, how does society and culture blended together impacts your behavior or who you are or how others are? Could we give an example of what the socio-cultural kind of aspect would be? All right, just think of your neighborhood or your community, right? Whether you live in an affluent community where there's lots of wealth, you will notice that the people there particularly act very similar, right? If you live in impoverished areas, you will notice that the people behave and act very similar. And if you observe both, you're like, wow, these places are completely different. What people do over here is completely different over there. We even say here in River Forest, how many people actually live in River Forest? I know very few people. No. Anybody live in River Forest? No? Anybody live in Oak Park? All right, so one person. There is a different mind frame in River Forest than, I would say, even Oak Park. They're next to each other. Well, let's say there's a huge contrast. We're on Augusta, right? The school's main address is on Augusta. Augusta and Harlem. If you go to Augusta and east of Austin, you will see a dramatic shift. Why? Why do we see a huge shift in everything? It may be an economic thing, right? To say that economics here creates a whole different dynamic of how people behave, how it looks, all these different factors. And those factors are very powerful to the individuals who are in that community. Versus here, it's very powerful to individuals who can afford to live over here. There's a certain set of, mind frame. So we have to be cognizant that this is just part of human nature, right? We say, we don't look at things as saying bad nor good. We just look at things and say is, and if it's attributed to you, then, if you perceive it to be bad, that's your perception of self, you should change things, right? But for here, we're just being scientists, we're observing, so we don't wanna be biased. Bias is saying, oh man, that's bad. Oh, that's good, that's real good. You know, I wish things were like this, things should be like that, right? That's showing our bias. Because what we have to do as intellectuals is observe and just report what is. This is what the data show. And it's not my opinion, this is what the data illustrates. So sociocultural is extremely powerful. Another example would be, let's say social media. Can everybody give an example of sociocultural, like psychological things on social media? What is the culture of certain things on Instagram? What's the culture of certain things on TikTok? Yes?
Making everything look glamorous.
Yes, right? Instagram, you put up your best, right? You don't put up your worst. Put up the best of the best. So in essence, there's a lot of fakeness, right? Yes?
Making life look easy.
Yeah, you're making life look easy, but that's extremely important because what does that do to the observer? It's like, hey, I'm gonna go look on Instagram. Guess what I see? This guy's doing this. He got a yacht. This guy's like traveling here in Hawaii. I'm in Chicago, right? This guy made $1 billion off crypto. This guy did this, right? Kanye's worth $6 billion. I need to do that. That breeds things within us, right? That makes us low self-esteem because we're not doing it. Envious. Oh my goodness, how come I can't look as pretty as her? Oh my gosh, she's perfect. Her body, man. Yes.
I think that like I understand like that it can seem like that, but I think that like some of us also see it as a like motivational type of way.
Correct.
Because like for example, like I see people like pursuing like their careers and it just motivates me because I want to pursue my career too. So like it can be seen as low, like maybe like putting like making others feel
Yes.
like they have like low self-esteem, but it can also be seen as motivation.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, which means once again we say, hey, as an observer, it's neither negative nor positive. It just is. Now, as you, from your perspective, you make the decision if it's negative or positive, right? You make you say, hey, this is creative. I wish I could do that. It's extremely creative, right? Now I got a new idea. I'm gonna do that too, but my own way. But nonetheless, there is a mind frame behind each of these things on social media. And it does influence. That's why it's called social, right? Social media. I'm an influencer. Influencing what? I'm influencing your brain and your behavior. You see me do it. Now you want to do it. But you seeing me do it does not actually tell the facts, right? You weren't there. You're not there. You don't know what's true, what's not true, you know what I mean? But you can't just take the idea of something and make it your own, right? So yes, but there are negative and positive things that do happen, right? As an observer, it can make us feel envy. I want to be like that. I wish I had this. I'm not doing this. This person doing that. I feel bad about myself. There's positive. Wow, he really inspired me. He or she really inspired me to do some great things. Right? But we have to observe like something is happening. There is something taking place that is changing our brain, our behavior. It is shifting, right? It's shifting how we behave, how we act. So, chapter 1 talks about biopsychosocial approach and talks about kind of what we discovered, biological influences, genetic predispositions, right? Your genetically influenced traits. You may be genetically influenced with, certain behaviors, certain abuses, genetic mutations that are random errors in your mutation, natural selection, and adaptation. We talked about that with neuroplasticity. And your genes responded to the environment. We just talked about that you just changed your environment. You went from here to there, now you got a whole different process going on. You're behaving different. And if you do it long enough, your genetics might nature is making sure that you survive. Right? What makes the average person have the ability to say, hey, I'm gonna sign up for the military, and now I signed up, and randomly a war happens. Right? You didn't expect it, but now you have to go fight. And what does fighting mean in war? It means taking life. Will your brain be able to adapt for you to be able to kill people? You may have justified in your brain that it's okay now to kill people, but it wouldn't be okay in regular society to kill people. Like, no, that would be wrong. But going over here, you may have justifications in your brain. You may have adapted and say, hey, this is just part of my survival. I don't know what the agenda is, nor do I care. I'm here, I have to do a job, therefore I must kill to survive. And I must kill to protect my, my fellow service. That's something that happens very normal. There's quite a few people in militaries all around the world. The average person. And if war were to get so bad, there may be a possibility that we all might have to go. You guys would definitely go because you're young and able to do a lot of things. So therefore, you'll be thrown into something, and you will have to adapt, right? And if you don't adapt, what does nature say? It says you go bye-bye. You didn't survive. Survival of the fittest. Natural selection. Nature takes the best genes and pass them on so that the species can continue. But if you don't survive or you promote weak genetics or weak genes, you won't survive. And your lineage should be done. It'll be done for you. Right? So nature, the most strongest force out there, is working behind the scene, saying like, hey, here's the program. This is the program. You're not going to change the program. Nobody can. Can't change the program of nature. It says this is what is, not what you want it to be, or whether you think something's bad, good, or you feel great about it, feel crappy about it. This is what is. It is looking to create survival of the species to continue. It's taking the best of the best in order to do it, like the best of people who can adapt. So yeah, your adaptation even here for learning. You're like, hey man, I gotta adapt and learn psychology a little bit, I don't know if I want to, I might be a little lazy, but I might not care for that subject too much. And I kind of be like, yeah, whatever. But you're still gonna have to adapt a little bit in order to succeed. That's just part of life. Sociocultural, psychological, we talked about learned fears and other learned expectations, emotional responses. Have we met people who are extremely emotional?
Yeah.
Right? Do we know people who are extremely emotional for the very slightest things?
Yes.
Right? So we have to think, why are these people that way? Just observation. Why are people that way? There's a reason for everything. Cognitive processing and perceptions of how we interpret things. What did I say? Women particularly have better senses of recognizing colors. Women's brains are more denser than male brains. Although on average, males may have larger area. But women's brains are more denser, which means they can actually see more detail, right? That's why a lot of women will be like, man, she's extremely detailed. Everything's categorized and put into place. And guys, a lot of guys may be a little bit more like, yeah, whatever, I mean, it's me type thing. Well, women can actually see colors that most men can't. So if you ask a guy, you might be like, hey honey, what color, does this blue look great on me? And he'll be like, that's purple, that's not blue. No, it's not, this is a certain shade of blue or something. Because men actually can't see the detail covers as much as women, right? The brains are more compact, more dense. So it's a lot more wiring going on for, looking for specific details of things. Whereas guys are more spatial oriented, right? We may have some slight, more achievements on, engineering of structures, right? We're looking at space, right? Playing football, hey, I need to do it that way, particularly that way, I know it's gonna slant under. Our brains are kind of wired more for spatial orientation, right? But, that's to say, everybody is still equal, right? Because these are just subjective things overall. Doesn't mean that, one person can't have more than the man. Female can have more than spatial orientation than a man. Yes, that's true, they can have. But we're just saying on average. And then we talked about sociocultural influence, presence of others, right? We live in a life full of others. So we're always trying to achieve for others. Mom and dad, gonna pay for me to go to college, so I gotta make them proud. We're doing things for others. And then our peer and other group influences. We talked a little bit about in-group, out-group, which is kind of went to my dissertation, right? My dissertation dealt with apartheid in South Africa, the racism, right? The history of racism and how it affects how people think, how it affects the government, how it affects your health. So it really dealt with like, hey, how does racism actually affect your health? Yeah, man, it seems as a bad thing to happen, but how it actually affects your physiological health overall. And remember once we said, if you do something long enough, it'll pass on. So I dealt with in-group, out-group. Very simple. You're either in or you're out. Hey, that guy looks more similar to me. He's in my group. That guy looks more similar to me. I could talk to him easier. Why? He's in the in group. What about her? No, that's out group. I don't want to talk to that person. That's a stranger to me. We think that constantly. We talked about stranger anxiety. But in group, out group is just that. You're either in or you're out, and it's classified. The Red Sox fan versus Yankees, and you see each other on a train, and one of your teams lost, you may literally kill each other. Right? You're a White Sox fan, and you're hanging around with your hat, and you're in Wrigleyville, and the Cubs game just got out, you might have some problems. Why? Doesn't matter if it's just sports. Just sports. No. People have real emotional attachment to their group. You're out. You're in an out group. So it's not just race, it's not just sex, gender, economics, right? I'm wealthy, you're poor, I'm this or that. It's millions of classifications we do for people. We classify people all the time. Which means we actually stereotype and prejudge, right? Which is part of nature. It's part of our survival skills, because we have to make some sort of calculation before something happens. You may have intuition, like, man, that car looks suspicious coming down the street. That's the second time you came. I'm gonna get out of here. Why? You just have a natural intuition to say, based off experience, I'm gonna classify this as this. That looks bad. Let me get out of here. Right? But yes, so keep in mind, we always have these in-group, out-group theories. We have them a lot in this country, right? Because we live in an individualistic society. We only care mostly about self. There's other places in the world where they have a collectivist society. They care more about the entire country. They're more homogenized. They don't need to be individually important. They say, as long as my neighbors are good and everybody else is good, this seems like a good thing. But here in the U.S., we're probably one of the most individualistic societies in the world. We're concerned about us. Who care less about what happens to your neighbor or whoever. It has nothing to do with you. So it's a different mindset, right? So in-group, out-group is really, really big here. Okay, you're Republican, are you Democrat? Did you get the vaccine? Did you not get the vaccine? Are they lying to us? Are they telling the truth? You're stupid for getting it. You're not stupid for getting it. Wear your mask, You know what I'm saying? Like, so there are all these process is happening in our brain on who's in, who's out. It's like, man, I don't wanna be around this. Why do you think that way? So yeah, these are things that make psychology extremely important. And if you really, really dive into psychology, you can make some pretty accurate calculations about people very quickly. Okay? If you're really, really observant. Which is kind of interesting, if you observe like people dating, right? Let's say you date, you do internet dating, you date and you meet someone, and you're trying to figure them out, you know. You can take some of this information here, and understanding will give you kind of a better idea and shape of what kind of person you're dealing with. Right? Which means people may not be able to give one past us as easily as before. Any questions so far? So do we like psychology? Is this an interesting subject? An interesting field? Don't forget, whatever you're studying for your major, this applies. There's no way you can escape. Your clients, right? Sports management, physical therapy, nursing. How do you interact with people? How are you gonna interact with your clients? They have different personalities. How are you gonna react to aggressive people? You know? How are you gonna end up getting what you want? And that's it. You know, so you have to observe others' behaviors, but observe yours as well too. So you have some measure of success for yourself. But understanding human behavior, it goes to communication as well too. Do you communicate well or you don't? You understand body language. Right now, we all have body language. Each one of you are seated differently. You see it differently for what reason? You're in a different mind state. One might be, hey, I'm busy. One might be, hey, I'm bored. One might be, hey, I'm thinking about some stuff, some other stuff. One might be, hey, I'm very attentive right now. This seems pretty interesting. One may be like, oh, well, you know, I don't want to talk too much because I don't want to sound stupid. I might be like, no, I want to answer that. I want to figure it out. I want to find out. Right? So our body language indicates a lot of different things about us. It shows confidence, it shows self-esteem. Body language can show lies, right? I have a friend, Benjamin Wolf, who works for the FBI, right? I have a lot of friends who work in government, and they're able to detect this thing very quickly. They're able to see people and look at your body language. They don't even speak to you. To see the way that you look, how you shift your eyes, your posture, and they're able to observe that very quickly to see who you are as a person. So body language is another big factor of how we can look at people and make some sort of generalizations or assessments about them. So yeah, psychology is important. We talked last class about some basic subfields of psychology. We talked about like social psychology, clinical psychology. Clinical deals with mental disorders, mental issues, such as schizophrenia, substance abuse, other issues. Antisocial personality disorder. Do we know what that is? Anybody know what that is? Okay. Antisocial personality disorder will kind of attributes, in the general scheme, it talks like kind of more who's sociopaths and who's psychopaths. Right? Sociopaths kind of are people without a conscience. These are people who could do very malicious things without a second thought. They wouldn't have any emotional response like you would about something. Right? So we could be like, man, how could someone do that? There's a reason behind it too. They may not have the emotional responses that you do to certain things. A lot of politicians are attributed to sociopathy being sociopath. A lot of CEOs And so it's almost in certain regard, to a degree, a requirement for certain high-level jobs. Why? Because you may have to fire 15,000 people, and they're gonna lose their homes, their cars, their family's gonna be destroyed. And you gotta do that. Who's gonna take that job? And who's gonna live with that? Somebody who may be a little bit sociopathic, anything, right? If you're a president, you're a congressman, you're an alderman, you're a senator, your job as a politician is to somewhat mislead, somewhat tell half-truths, somewhat elicit some sort of response from others, from either your in-group or your out-group. You may be a little bit, you may need to have a little bit of sociopathy, you be a little bit sociopathic in order to live with that, to do that as your job every day, right? You may need that as a general. Like, yeah, hey, we can go here and we're gonna execute 3,000 people. That's what we're doing today. Someone else may have an emotional shock and they won't be able to do it. Others can. Not all the same. Where psychopaths generally, the difference is, sociopaths are kind of blind, right? Psychopaths are not. Psychopaths still have a conscience. They just within certain events may just be very psychopathic. You know, like, oh, he got triggered. He triggered. And he did a really bad thing. But he could still live day to day a normal life. Where sociopaths kind of use sociopathy throughout all their lives, you know. They steal a little money here. They're always looking to kind of gain for themselves. They manipulate others, right? Because they don't have the same emotional responses as others do, which may give them advantage over others. You're like, oh, the other people are emotional, I'm not. I can get what I want. Because I know I influence them now. Not influence their emotions. Yeah, basic research, applied research. We talked a little about research and scientific method when it comes to psychology, but we'll get more to that as we go on to try to understand what exactly is research when it comes to psychology. What is real research? You know? For my dissertation, so I said I did my dissertation in South Africa, which means that to get South Africans to participate. Being here in the U.S., I was going back and forth, but being here in the U.S., I had to get people in South Africa to give their experiences on living through apartheid. Also get approval here from the U.S. to be able to do it, get approval from South Africa. So it took a lot, so I had to go back and forth. It was kind of an international study. But it was getting people together. It's not just me looking at something and coming up with some data and say, here's the result. This was actually getting quite a few number of people together to give their experiences on something, ask them certain questions, get those responses, collect the data, look what it is, draw conclusions, say this is what the data says. So these are my recommendations, not the end all be all, right? I mean, hey, I could have used more participants. I could have did a longer study. In which when you get at the doctor level, they say, you're just contributing to the body of knowledge. It's not the end all be all. Somebody may come with a bigger study with more people, more specific. And that's what learning is about. That's how we grow the scientific community. You know, what today doesn't have to stay, somebody will build upon it. Counseling psychologists, I know in high school they always had typical school counselors to deal with trauma, right? Because you guys going through high school as well as myself at the time had biological shifts happening within your body. You had cultural shifts, right? What were some of the cultural things that happened, or sociocultural things happening in high school? Anybody say? What were some of the things in high school that people had to deal with the social aspect? What were some of the issues that you guys, when you were back in high school, what were some of the issues you had to deal with? When it came to groups or anything like that? Yes,
Drama.
drama.
Within friend groups.
Within friends or with
With
opposing?
friends and other groups.
Yeah, you know, you're having issues based off everybody going through puberty or post-puberty. You're like, hey, there's actual biological things happening here to make people more aroused, making people more aggressive, making people more emotional. Those are challenges in high school, right? People going through a lot of that, and then also the social part of, are you in a group or out group? Like, no, we don't hang out with them. Why? They're lame. Who said so? Oh, we did. Right, so we were going back, we're still classifying people all the time within our brains, categorizing them, doing these things. So yes, you needed counselors back there because people going through a lot of stuff, going through things at home, let alone in school. Emotional. Clinical, we talked about deal with mental disorders and things of that nature. Psychiatrists, difference between psychologists and psychiatrists. Psychiatrists deal with prescribing actual medication to people. Right? There's a medication to deal with your depression. There's a medication to deal with schizophrenia. Things like that. And then community psychologists, which is kind of deal with sociocultural, right? You have someone who understands the community, they understand what's valued here, you know, how people make meaning in this community, what's important, what's not important, what are the main issues, and how to address those. There's a lot of different ways you can go if you enter the field of psychology. Who got the time? What time? 48. All right. And, yeah, there's some considerations if you have some interest in psychology. We'll leave this next, looking at critical thinking. But before we go, any questions? Anything? Always feel free to ask anything about life. And I deal as a psychologist, as an international psychologist, I deal with trying to understand people, right? So you can come to me with anything next about school, you know, career, employment issues. I'll be able to help. But yeah, once again, I'll upload the content. I'll begin uploading this starting, I would say, tomorrow. So we'll start from chapter 1, 2, 3. So you can start